The story of grace begins early in 1922 with a revival in East St. Louis, Illinois. Officiating the revival was Reverend Fred Lohman, a local pastor from Trinity Tabernacle in St. Louis, Missouri. Encouraged by the success of the revival, Pastor Lohman next held a series of tent meetings on the south side of East St. Louis. The tent meetings evolved and led to people holding regular gatherings in their homes. In the same way we see modern churches planted, the home meetings were the seed of the church we know today. On September 24, 1922, the church officially organized with 35 members. Reverend Lohman continued to lead the church for 1 year until October 29, 1923, when Reverend J.F. Bryan became the first resident pastor of Full Gospel Tabernacle. Under Pastor Bryan's leadership, the church began to grow, and on October 24, 1924, Full Gospel Tabernacle became a member of the Assemblies of God denomination. It was this growth that sparked a dream within the congregation of building their own permanent facility. They purchased a vacant lot at 616 North 26th Street in East St. Louis and began to design a facility that Full Gospel Tabernacle would end up calling home for 41 years. Construction began on the new facility early in 1927, and on January 15, 1928, the congregation dedicated their new church building. They were proud of their new home, which had a seating capacity of 500 people and appraised for $39,200 in 1930.
Well, it was on 26th and State Street, which was across from Curris Funeral Home. And at that time, East St. Louis was the all-American city.
The church itself was a beautiful building at the time, and it still is, I understand, but we actually had a youth room down in the basement. We had to go to the basement for youth meetings. Next to that was Sunday school classes, and we had the old maroon drapes, just like most Pentecostal church did in those days. And we had the Sunday school boards up on the walls telling how many people were in each room. We had all of that, but in the back we had a big room that the men had built probably right about the time that we started attending, and that became the big fellowship hall. And we had a lot of good fellowships back there in the back room. So the church, and then above that, they built a parsonage for the pastor.
Over the next 27 years, the church would undergo several leadership changes. On October 24, 1929, Reverend Guy Phillips succeeded Reverend Bryan as pastor of the church. Pastor Phillips remained at Full Gospel Tabernacle for 7 successful years and led the church to new record levels of membership. From its humble beginnings of 35 members in 1922, the church had grown to over 600 members by October 1931.
We were always able, to me, at a young person, of course, we were always able to obtain really good speakers to come in to teach the revivals, to do special services, singings in those days. We used to have the singings up on the platform where quartets would come in, and we were always able to draw those groups and those great ministers, and I don't feel like we could have done it had we not been a great church in the East St. Louis area.
I have a special memory. When I was small, about 5, 6 years old, Oral Roberts came to the church to hold some services. And they would bring the Sunday school benches from the basement up into the altar space in the front of the church. And the kids all sat in those chairs, on those benches. And one night, as he was speaking, a lady rose up holding a baby, and she said, "My baby is not breathing." So he invited her to come to the front, and he prayed for that baby, and that baby started breathing again. That is one of the biggest memories in my mind.
On March 6, 1944, Reverend A. Anderson became pastor of Full Gospel Tabernacle. Under Pastor Anderson, the congregation saw several milestones, including paying off all church debt and withdrawing from the Assemblies of God, becoming an independent church in 1949.
Okay, my first pastor that I remember would have been Brother Trotter. And I remember his family, but I would have only been maybe 4 or 5 years old. I don't remember at what age that was, but then Brother Anderson came, and I think I was about 6 when he came to the church. And he had a daughter that was the same age as me, and were really close friends, even up until she passed away a few years ago.
Brother Anderson kind of spoke with, what do you call that, accent?
He was Swedish. Brother Anderson was Swedish.
Yeah.
And he did speak with a little bit of an accent, not much.
In total, 10 different men pastored the church throughout the first 34 years of its life. But the next man God called to pastor Full Gospel Tabernacle would lead the church through one of the most significant periods of its existence. In 1956, Reverend Henry F. Redman and his wife Helen came to Full Gospel Tabernacle. At the time, the church did not have a vested interest in international missions, but Pastor Redman brought with him a clear desire to create one. He began a radio broadcast that aired on local airwaves every Sunday through Friday, and as a result, the church saw growth. The listenership of the broadcast began to send offerings without any plea from Pastor Redman, and with a vision for international missions growing in the church, he used these offerings to begin supporting missionaries around the globe. To this day, the church continues to tithe 10% of all giving to missionaries both home and abroad.
The biggest thing I remember from Pastor Redman is he looked a lot older than he was. That's surprising. But the thing I remember the most is that he was very involved in missions, and that was really neat to see because I came from a church that was not very mission-oriented and came to a church that they talked about it all the time.
One thing that comes to my mind is, and many people don't realize this, that the board years ago made a point of saying 10% of the monthly or the weekly income, all tithes and giving, 10% of that goes to the mission fund. And out of that mission fund, Grace Church has been able to pay thousands and thousands of dollars. We don't have an accumulation of how much money has been given to worldwide missions, India, Japan, all over the world because of that 10%. And that's just above what the people of the church might give to each one of those places as well.
In 1968, Full Gospel Tabernacle purchased 8 acres of land in what would become the community of Fairview Heights, Illinois. Originally developed as productive farmland, Fairview Heights officially incorporated in October of 1969. Today, it is a community of over 15,000 people, but at the time the church purchased the land, it was nothing more than acres of farmland situated around Illinois State Highway 159.
It was nothing.
Country.
It was just country.
It was country, not a whole lot of houses.
There was no mall or nothing.
No, it didn't have a mall. And
I think they had a malt shop down here in the corner and Standard Station.
but other than that, I don't remember too much about the move itself.
The congregation immediately began work on a new facility on the Fairview Heights property, and on Easter Sunday, 1969, they moved into their new home at 5151 North Illinois Street, Fairview Heights, Illinois. Later, the church purchased an additional 4 acres adjacent to the original 8, creating the 12-acre campus that you see today. It was the perfect place for gatherings such as church picnics, weddings, and Royal Ranger campouts.
Probably the best thing I remember is that the picnics, all the good times we have with the picnic grounds. We're getting ready to celebrate the 4th of July picnic, and we're going to do an old-fashioned picnic. And this is something that we used to do all the time, once a year. And as a child, I remember that constantly. That's my fondest memory as a child.
The main event I remember when I was younger was Easter, because we did the Easter egg hunt, and then I remember coming inside and it felt really dark and I didn't like it. I wanted to go back out and look for more eggs, but I feel like that's any kid. But coming back would be the first picnic that I came back to, and everybody was out there. It was before the COVID shutdown. It would have been late summer 2019, and just a whole lot of welcoming faces.
And then as he was talking about the 4th of July picnic, that has always been an annual wonderful thing for the church. The guys would go out the night before and they would spend the night and to secure the place for us. And it was at Monk's Mound, now known as Cahokia Mounds. And at that time, the mounds were full of trees, forest, and we would run up and down as kids. We'd run up and down those mounds. And then they always had the traditional softball game, and then of course we had lots of food and soda and ice cream.
But soon, the original sanctuary would prove too small. In September of 1974, Full Gospel Tabernacle dedicated a new church addition, a 400-seat sanctuary constructed in the style of the original sanctuary and built onto the side of the original church building.
Okay, this sanctuary was not here. The part over where your offices and all of that is, that was, Brother Redman had an office in the front, and then the sanctuary was down from that. It went that way instead of this way.
That wasn't there either till we built it.
Well, I think the excitement about expanding, and then of course it was kind of interesting when we were in the old sanctuary, and then you were there one Sunday, and then the next Sunday we came into the new sanctuary. That was kind of interesting, and it had been built, and of course nobody saw all what was going on and so forth.
Orange carpet, orange pews.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was an amazing transformation.
Yes, it was.
When they changed the fabric and the carpet. And I know that Pam had a lot to do with that. And I just think it looks so much nicer than it did when we first started.
While Pastor Redman had great success as pastor of Full Gospel Tabernacle, he still had a deep love for missions. In 1981, he decided to resign as senior pastor of the church, and the congregation set him in as pastor emeritus of Full Gospel Tabernacle. This afforded him the time he needed to establish his own missionary program and write his book, The Road Not Taken, which details the extent of his life in ministry.
Brother Redman was a missionary-minded pastor. He loved to go to the foreign countries, into the bush country, and try to win those people over, tell them about Jesus. And it was a real passion of his to go to Africa and India.
I think one of them has been the missionary outreach that we've had. Pastor Redman had a true heart for that. His mind was on it, and this church picked up on that vision. I remember many times that Pastor Redman would come and say that there was a need in a foreign field and he needed so much money, and by the time he left that service, he had twice as much as he needed. The people really bought into that, and I think that really had a real impact.
In October of 1981, Reverend Harley Fiddler became the new pastor of Full Gospel Tabernacle. After 2 years, Pastor Fiddler resigned, and the congregation asked Pastor Emeritus Redman to return as interim pastor. He agreed with the condition that he could continue his missionary travels. When Pastor Redman was traveling, he would have guest speakers minister for him on Sundays, but he knew that was not enough. The church needed more pastoral support while he was gone. So in November of 1984, he hired a young minister from Louisiana named Reverend Hal F. Santos to serve as youth pastor and help oversee the church while he was away.
My fondest memories are from when Pastor Hal started the church and took over as the youth pastor. And he would take us on mission trips, and conferences, like to Kansas City and other youth conferences.
I mean, I remember when he came, and he and Pam would come over, because we just lived back here in the back, so he and Pam would come over. They'd be out walking or running or something, and they'd come by the house and chit-chat with us, and we just considered them family to us. I mean, their family was not here, and we just kind of filled part of that, I guess, because they were our children's ages, and we just fell in love with them. And
He was sort of a funny guy, you know.
Yeah, I agree with that. I remember when we were talking, I can't remember who it was we were talking with now, and said that, you know, he was going to come here and be youth pastor and that, and they go, oh, he'll get things moving for you. And it was like, okay, and then after he was here, we thought, yep, we did.
3 months after hiring Reverend Santos, Pastor Redman recommended to the congregation that Reverend Santos be named associate pastor of the church. He served as associate pastor for 1 year, at which time Pastor Redman went before the congregation with the recommendation of making Reverend Santos the new senior pastor. With the support of Pastor Redman, Reverend Hal F. Santos and his wife Pamela became the new senior pastors of Full Gospel Tabernacle in February of 1986.
At the time, and he has stated many a times, at the time he was hired strictly as a youth pastor, and then about a year before Pastor Redman was killed, he came to the board and he said, you know, I feel led that we should go ahead and install Hal, as he called him at that time, as the senior pastor of the church. Said the time has come to do that. I feel like we need to do it. So with his recommendation, the board started rallying to that point, and then we brought him to the membership, and he was accepted. And one of the best things we ever did.
You know, Pastor Hal is probably the most relational person I've ever met. You know, he builds everything about relation and getting to know you, and he wants to be present and so forth. And that was so different from Pastor Redman. Pastor Redman, even though he was a speaker and missionary, he was not outgoing with a lot of things that were going on. And that's not anything bad. That was just his personality. And he was thinking missions and living missions 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And then when Pastor Hal came, and he became very much a part of your life, and he was out there talking with you and stuff. So his relationship ability has really brought new excitement. I think it was kind of different at first because we weren't used to that. But through the years, you begin to love him and appreciate that and feel comfortable, and I think that's what's helped Grace Church become known as a very friendly church, outgoing, accepts anybody who walks through the front door, and being a part of that.
With Pastor Santos now leading the church, Pastor Emeritus Redman resumed his ministry in missions. 5 months later, he was speaking to missionaries at a missions convention in Elkton, Maryland, when he was tragically struck by a passing vehicle while walking across the street for dinner. Pastor Emeritus Redman died on July 6, 1986. In total, he served Full Gospel Tabernacle as senior pastor and pastor emeritus for 30 years.
he instilled in us, for we know that all things work together for good to them that love the Lord. That was every sermon. It was contained in there somewhere.
Pastor Santos brought a passion for the local community to Full Gospel Tabernacle. He personally took the lead in serving Fairview Heights and the surrounding communities by volunteering as a police chaplain and working as a part-time football coach for O'Fallon Township High School. Through his willingness to constantly be available to the community and its leadership, Full Gospel Tabernacle gained a reputation of being a church willing to open its doors and serve the community at all times.
Pastor Hal cares about people, and just even starting life groups, and cares about relationships that people have with one another in the congregation, and relationships that he has with people. He invests a great deal of time.
He's very personable. A lot of pastors that I have been to church with are very strict routine, and it could be the same way here too, but I feel like he relates a lot more to the people that are in the congregation. He makes it very clear that even though he is a pastor, he still is becoming better as a person himself, and he's a human being.
And then the other one, I think, has come when Pastor Hal came. He brought a real community-mindedness to the church, not only within our church community, but the outside community. And Pastor Redman had told him at one point that that was going to be his calling, and felt that God had called the next pastor to be very community outreach, but still be in missions, and we're still greatly involved in missions. But our outreach now has been a lot within the community, and I think that is a thing that Grace Church has been known for throughout the years.
He has continued what Brother Redman started, and has done even more. Pastor Hal, the one thing I think of, Pastor Hal tells many a time how Brother Redman told him when he was going to be senior pastor, he said, I was a world missionary, so you're going to be a world and a local missionary. And that's what Pastor Hal has done. He has cemented us in the local community through his work with the police department, with the funeral homes, bringing 180 in, his love for teens. He has built up the local community church.
February 1997 saw the next step in the evolution of the Fairview Heights location. The church completed and dedicated a brand new fellowship hall, now called the Total Life Center, or TLC for short. Opposite this building, the church also constructed a garage that shared a roofline with the fellowship hall, creating an open-air breezeway large enough to house outdoor meetings and fellowships. Through the years, the TLC has been home to all kinds of gatherings, including youth services, fellowships, business meetings, and small groups. Complete with a full-service commercial kitchen, the flexibility of the TLC made it an excellent addition to the Full Gospel Tabernacle campus.
I feel the TLC, when it was finished, it was just a great place for us to attend gatherings and, receptions, and we weren't as crowded as we were in the basement. So that was really nice.
Just a very nice venue for fellowships and events here at the church.
We did a dinner theater, and we did it over in the TLC. And what it was is that we had the dinner before, and then we did two of them that I remember. The first one was Death Valley, and it was where we each played. We had a character. I had to play a Chinese servant, which was really fun. That I enjoyed that. But we practiced and then had the dinner. We did it 3 nights, I believe, and it was just kind of exciting. It drew people in outside of the church as well as inside the church. And it was just one of those things where it was another activity that we could get involved in here at Grace and get as many people involved as we can.
In fact, we were told when we were, we met in January, 2 months and 4 days later, we were engaged, and then we got married in August. And we were told that they were going to have the TLC completed by then, but it wasn't completed until a year later.
So we had our reception in the wonderful basement of Full Gospel Tabernacle.
A few years following the opening of the Total Life Center, Full Gospel Tabernacle experienced another major milestone. In an effort to convey the message of God's love to the local community, Pastor Santos recommended that the church change its name to something that would attract a wider demographic of people. After much prayer and discussion amongst the congregation, in January of 2000, the church officially adopted a new name, and Grace Church was born.
I remember the name change, and it was a difficult time because there were people in the church that did not want the name to change. We grew up with that name, and I mean, obviously, we weren't opposed to it, but some people were. And it caused some friction here and there, but everybody got over it. And
Yeah, it wasn't too bad.
The name change was a big event. It did not go over easy. It's one of those things, I think if you were to ask Pastor Santos, it took a year or so before he finally took it to the board even. It was something he talked about. He would rally for it, and eventually he took it to the board, and the board says, okay, we'll try it. We went to the membership at the time. It was not accepted fully, but yet I think people realized it was needed, but they just didn't want to give up the Full Gospel Tabernacle name. Now they did. Eventually they saw the point that it was causing problems with the name. People that might want to come to Full Gospel did not like the word tabernacle, and that was the reason the change was for people viewing the name of the church and looking for a church to go. We were trying to come up with a kinder name.
I remember that we were young adults and newly married, and we wanted Full Gospel Tabernacle to be inviting to everybody, and the name Full Gospel Tabernacle sometimes limited or was confusing for some people. And I know that Pastor Howell and the board wanted this church to be understandable, and people knew what the church was about. And so I think that Grace is a fitting name because that's what this church is about. It's about grace.
Shortly after the name change, the church began to grow. With a passion to reach the next generation, Pastor Santos and Grace Church began to envision a revolutionary facility that would attract the youth of the community and create an opportunity to present them with the gospel of Jesus Christ. The church tore down the garage that was opposite the Total Life Center and in its place constructed the Grace 180 building to house its youth ministry. Opening in May of 2002, this year marks the 20th anniversary of the building. Throughout the past 20 years, thousands of young people have come to play in the game room, meet new friends, and find a relationship with Jesus Christ.
What is now the 180 Center used to be a garage where the youth met, and that was really exciting, and they opened the garage doors, and then not long after that, Pastor got the vision that we needed to build a youth building, and we did. And
I remember going into the 180 building and following my sister around, and I remember there being the small little basketball courts, but there was nothing really in there yet. So whenever we would play basketball, there wasn't any real lighting in there, and it was kind of dark, but it was still fun.
Oh, it was exciting. I mean, the basketball cages, video games available for kids. It was just really a teen center. And the auditorium, I thought that was really cool because they had the bleachers from a
Central
junior high, a gymnasium. And so it was just really a worship center for teens. Very, very, very cool.
Continuing with Pastor Santos's passion for the next generation, in 2019, Grace Church broke ground on a new children's wing of the main building. This classroom-style facility created a place for the children of Grace to hear the story of Jesus in small group settings and then come together to worship Him in a fun, energetic space all their own. On February 7th, 2021, the church opened the doors of its new children's wing to the future of Grace Church, children ages 0 to 6th grade.
I'm very thankful that our children were born here and went through all the ministries at Grace Church.
Dedicated and baptized, and the church has invested in the next generation, and Pastor Kevin Hardcastle was a children's pastor and taught the kids the Bible song, and to this day, 22 and 23 years old, they still can sing the song and know the books of the Bible. Pastor Don Ross did some awesome VBS programs and could just really tell the Bible stories and make them come to life. Pastor Jerry Tipton and David Bodeker in the youth program, they connected and built a relationship with the kids. And I know the most important thing is the relationship with God, but they developed that relationship with the kids and took them to, did some really gross and disgusting things in youth. And, but the kids loved it and they wanted to go. Our kids never complained about coming to youth. They just knew that was an expectation, and they were here and they never complained, and they enjoyed coming to the children's programs and the youth programs.
And they've made lifelong friends here.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout the history of Full Gospel Tabernacle and Grace Church, one constant remains. The church exists to inspire and lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ. As the church has changed throughout the years to keep pace with the ever-evolving society we live in, it has always ensured that the relationship with Christ remains at the core of the church's culture. On March 1st, 2022, Pastor Santos and the ministry board laid the foundation for the future, promoting Reverend Ben and Michelle Goddard from youth pastor to associate pastor, and began grooming Pastor Goddard to succeed Pastor Santos as senior pastor of Grace Church.
I'm excited that he has the same vision that Pastor Howell had for the next generation, and it's very evident in the way he approaches the youth group, and he started the Emerge.
With Pastor Redman's love for international missions and Pastor Santos' heart for the next generation, Pastor Goddard brings a fresh vision for the church while still carrying the vision set down by the men before him.
I also like that because they were missionaries, they bring that message here to the youth and to the young adults, and they were serving the homeless in East St. Louis and St. Louis area. They really get the youth involved in helping with Sleep in Heavenly Peace, and that whole mission concept and idea he is investing in and instilling in the youth and Emerge.
Well, I think Pastor Goddard is going to do a great job in carrying the work forward after Pastor Hal. I believe he has a heart for God also, and a heart for the church itself, for the people.
100 years is honorable. It is remarkable, and it's something to be proud of. But the church is so much more than the building it sits in or the men that lead it. 100 years is the people that come to worship together, the people that volunteer to serve together, the people that seek the voice of God together. This is what makes 100 years. Thank you to all of the people that were Full Gospel Tabernacle and are Grace Church. Thank you to everyone who has sacrificed time, finances, and giftings to move God's calling forward. You are 100 years, and with God's blessing, you will be 100 more.
Here we are on top of the stars. Never thought we'd ever get this far. We live for moments like this. We come alive in moments like this. Here we are, this is a time like a dream coming to life. We live for moments like this. We come alive in moments like this. In moments like this. I try to take a breath, thoughts racing through my head. I try to capture it, but a picture can't hold what a heart is feeling. I just wanna stop the world from spinning, slow it all down for a minute, so that I can take it in. I can take it in. Here we are, on top of the stars. Never thought we'd ever get this far. We live for moments like this. We come alive in moments like this. Here we are, this is a time like a dream coming to life. We live for moments like this. We come alive in moments like this. but no words can say what my heart is feeling. I just wanna stop the world from spinning, slow it all down for a minute, so that I can take it in. I can take it in.